Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about acceleration, apps, compass connections, and location signals. Now all of these are going to be slightly different than anything else for several reasons. Number one, these are specifically for mobile applications, and you can use these in model-driven apps, which you can see over here applies to. Okay, but we're going to show you the Canvas app implementation today. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is I've got a demo for you, a mobile app, but I want to show you some differences here. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to cover is the, we're going to cover the acceleration, which is tied to your phone's accelerometer. And another thing that I want to show you is a couple things. So look at the different items that are here. We're going to use acceleration today, but do you see that there's like a box in a set of brackets, and then there's just like a purple, much larger box? So the larger box is essentially functions, and functions take in parameters. So let's just do this ACOS thing to show you something, right? So I click that to select it, and then nothing happens. But as soon as I put the magical parenthesis, which is what functions are, just like you're used to if you're using Excel, you can see that this takes in a parameter of a number. So if I go back to the acceleration item, this is really an object. If I try to put a parenthesis here, nothing happens. And if I hover over it and just leave it here, it could see acceleration equals, and it says that there's an error, but look at the data type. It's a record. That means for you to get out the handy dandy period and dig down deeper into this to see what additional items are there undiscovered for you. And you can see that you have these choices of X, Y, and Z. And so that's what I've got here. I've got X, I got Y, I got Z. And so your phone's accelerometer is going to give you positional coordinates based on the accelerometer's information for these coordinates in space. If you've ever used something or a program or 3D program like Blender, you can see that it's at height, width, and depth, and this is the same thing for the X, Y, and Z coordinates. All kinds of really cool and interesting ways of using this. There's some virtual reality stuff that you can insert into your Power Apps. Down, I think it's under Media, and then there's like a measuring camera. That might be interesting, right? So you're going to take a picture, you're going to measure a wall. Who knows, maybe you're going to do some XYZ, maybe you're going to do like a Pokemon type of application or something to it. In any event, there's all kinds of really cool things that you can use this for, but these are in mobile apps. Now, I'm going to have to share my screen on my phone where I'm going to run this application so you can see all this happening in real time as the accelerometer picks up information and it feeds you data. But let's just go through the rest of this these methods, or objects rather. So we covered that one very briefly because there's really not a whole lot to go into it. Application, we're going to come back to this because this is one where when you click the dot, there's layers and layers and layers of an onion. This one's going to take a little bit longer. So let's jump into the compass and let's look at this. So here I have compass.heading, but let's just go to do compass, and then we'll see that this again is a record, and we see that it only has the one heading. And so that's pretty straightforward and easy to use because there's only one way to use it. You simply just type it as I see here. And the sad thing, at least as of right now, I thought I read something a while ago where you can actually emulate or test a cell phone. But you know, when you go into this preview mode, there is a phone item, and I can, you know, preview it like this, but I don't see a way of emulating a phone so that you can get data out of this for the purposes of development. You're simply just going to have to develop it, publish it, look at it on the phone, go back and forth, test, QA it, you know, and do whatever needs to be. I am going to pause the video because I do remember reading something a while back that allowed you to emulate or mock up, or there was some setting, even somewhere I thought it was in here, that you could turn on an advanced setting. But I'm going to research this real quick just in case there's some value for this video. I'll be right back. Yeah, so I did a little bit of research here, and I'm not able to see anything specifically as it relates to trying to test these features or these methods or program functions in here. Just a quick call out, but not to spend too much time on it. There is a couple of features notable to mobile. So if this is your first time dealing with mobile, by no means is this video, this is all off topic, by the way. So this is kind of just like a bonus ad inline. Back enabled, if you enable this, this is mobile feature. This is for Android, the gesture and or the old-fashioned key in Android for going back. If you don't have this on, which I believe for me it was on by default, then that functionality won't work. So if you intend to use it on Android and want that back function to work, you need to make sure that this is on. Also make sure you always go through your upcoming features, your general features, because there's additional items in here. So I think down here, for example, Dataverse offline allows user to see changes allow users to see and change Dataverse data even when they are not connected. This was on by default for this particular environment. And then as you go over into the back end, so like you go to the settings and features, you get all of these additional features through here. You know, they change and add a bunch of stuff all the time. So this is what I do when I go off on a tangent trying to figure out, okay, what settings, what additional flips and switches are available. Make sure you go in here periodically to see what may or may not be changed. There's also a great Power Platform blog thing that's online. You can subscribe to that. So as new features and announcements come out on the Power Platform, that'll announce these, that will let you know. Go ahead and subscribe to those. All right, so that being said, let's go back to what the topic or focus of this video is. Now we're going to move into the location item. Let me pull up this help window again. So we got acceleration, we have compass, so we've got connection and location signal. So let's deal with location and come back to connection, because connection's a little bit esoteric, and there's a couple of different implementation ways of doing this. All right, so let's dealing with the location. So location is very similar to acceleration. You have location, and then you have these three options available to you. You have your altitude, longitude, and latitude. Very similar to X, Y, and Z, whereas accelerometer is more tracking positional in space. Alt, lat, and long is more of a higher level or global area. But they're basically used almost for very similar purposes. Lat long obviously is going to be very helpful when you're trying to integrate this data or these data points into a map. Maybe every, I don't know, you have a timer on a screen and it goes off every 30 seconds or every minute, and it writes information or data into a collection, and that collection is capturing where the phone is in space over time. And it's writing that collection locally, and then, I don't know, maybe you upload that collection into Dataverse or SharePoint list or whatever. And all of that data can then be used to track where your phone's been or the motion thereof, and plot all of that on a map, and which is kind of interesting, especially if you're driving and going far enough or far down the road. You'll be able to kind of see where you were every 30 seconds positionally in map. Now that is insane, because it takes up and will eat up a bunch of data on your phone. It'll eat up a bunch of memory within the app, so I wouldn't suggest doing that, but I was just kind of giving that as an illustration of just something cool to play with for a little design type based app. Okay, now we're moving into the connection area. So connection, very similar. So we have connection dot. Now this time we have a bunch of different items. Okay, so connection, we've got last sync message, the connected item, and that's going to be either true or false. This is the last sync date. So last sync, so if you're doing offline data, this is where last sync message, last sync date comes into play. You're going to need to or want to capture all of this. The metered is also going to kind of bring back information whether or not the phone has metering enabled and or set up, and give information about that. And then the synchronization status is going to be there as well. So the details on connection should be down here. And if you look at this, it talks about connected connection, meters, connected sync. So a lot of what I've just said here. So make sure to go ahead and spend a little bit more time, because it doesn't accept a lot of parameters. I'm just simply going to make you aware of where the help file is, and then show you an implementation or two, and then kind of what that does look like on the phone. So that's essentially what we've got here, connection.connected. And it's either going to come back true or false. Obviously, I'm on a desktop, so it comes back true. And so these are all of the items that I have here on screen. Now, the one item that does get a little bit tricky or gnarly is this app. I'm just going to pop a very large and ugly, hideous label on the screen to illustrate some of this next information. So I'm just going to put white. I'm not going to include this in the template. This is something you should explore on your own. All right, so I'm going to take this. We're going to center the text, make it nice and big. All right, guys. So same thing as before. We have app. Now this data type is a control. So I can't do a function on it. It doesn't accept that. But if I do the app dot, this is where I was like, this is where things kind of get a little bit crazy and gnarly, because there's really a lot of these to deal with. And you can, again, go back into this application app, and here it's going to give you a couple of things. Now, what they've also done is buried this app object that I'm showing you right now in the Canvas app. If you click this link, it takes you over to the application object. And so this goes into each one of these in extensive detail. It gives you formula properties and examples to use here. I'm just going to show you a couple of ones, especially the ones that I use most often or that I help. So Studio version may be helpful in the event that you create something that is compatible only with a certain version of Studio and above. That could be helpful to store out into a database or maybe into a file or someplace. Active Screen. Now this one I use all the time. So app.ActiveScreen is dynamic. So over here, this app only has one screen. So it's not necessarily a big deal. But if I had bunches of screen, a lot of times the way I use this is in my titling. So if I have some title of, say for example, this is my title and I am on screen. And so let's do this and concatenate. Let's put this all fully in quotes so I don't get some weird stuff. So I do app.ActiveScreen. Now, once again, you see the data type, it says control. That means we're going to have to add another period. And you can see how, what I was saying earlier, layers and layers within the onion. So you got app.ActiveScreen, and within ActiveScreen, I have all of these additional items to choose from. So for the example what I'm trying to use here, I can get the application's active screen, and each active screen has a name, which is what I want to use here, but it also has a height, a position, a width, whether or not you can do printing, you can specify background images, orientation, default orientation, and all that other stuff, or get the orientation rather. So you could say like, hey, if the orientation's this, then start dynamically moving things or hiding things on the screen. That may be helpful if you've got a challenge layout, but a lot of times I just use it for the name. And say, now I'm using, this is my title, and I'm on screen. And now if you look down here, it says I'm on screen 1. And so that's very helpful to help with navigational titles and different things of that nature. So that's generally how I use it. A lot of times, another one that I'll use is like application active screen.width. And I'll use that when I'm calculating dynamic spacing in, I don't know, a row or something to do with a layout, because I need to maybe take the entire width of the screen so that I can get the whole number for the width. And then if I have a number of objects on screen, I would divide that whole number from that width of the screen by, each object, subtract out the width of each of those objects, and add in any spacing. I know this is all verbally sounds crazy, but nonetheless, for those of you that have done it, or if what I'm saying makes any sense, then it would be helpful. But it all starts with knowing where to get the title or the active screen. You can also do it for the app too, but I usually just do the active screen because it's very, very specific for that. So those are the two that I mainly use, is name and width, and that's that particular area for active screen. So you also have the design width and height, and you also have the minimum screen width, which is not the actual screen width, it's what the minimum size should be. There are size breakpoints, test case ID, testing test suite. Now I have a video, not an extensive video, but I do have a video out here on YouTube talking about the Test Studio. If you're not familiar, it's the item that's buried down here underneath Advanced Tools, and then you have Tests. And this opens up a whole separate thing called Test Studio, and this is where you write test cases for your screens, for your apps, to test to make sure things and behaviors are going to be there. So if you're into QA and QAing of your application and Canvas app, definitely check out the Test Studio. All right, so with all of that being said, those are the additional options for the application object. And if I bring my item back over here, I think I covered everything that we were supposed to cover in this video, although I feel like I am missing something. Yep, no, we've got all of them in there. All right, guys, so that is going to wrap up this video. If you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the comments section below. And as always, thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next video.